staying with us. Got it. Welcome. We're really excited to be with you. We are Zooming in from Washington, D.C. and E.L. Haynes Public Charter School, which is in the Petworth neighborhood of D.C. And would love just folks who are with us to chat your name will be there, but your hometown and one of your favorite foods, just to get a sense of who's in the room and what your appetite is like. And if you are able to come on camera, we'd love to see your faces as well. And then we will get started in just a second. Got some cake, corn on the cob. Kenley, you didn't put your hometown. Nice, Toronto tacos. Thank you. All right, so I think hopefully we're all settled. So I will kick us off as you're chatting where you're from and what you love to eat. I am Meredith Morelle. I am with Kindred Communities in DC, and I am joined by 3 amazing members of one of Kindred's school partners, Brittany Wagner-Friel, who's the principal of the elementary school, Dominique Moore, who is a parent at E.L. Haynes Elementary, and Kenley Okada, who is also a parent at Haynes Elementary. And you'll hear a lot more from them in just a few moments when we have a chance for a panel conversation. So just going to go over our objectives for our time together, which I know is going to fly. Want to give you an opportunity to learn about Kindred's equity-driven approach to family-school partnership, and really to learn that through hearing from Dominique, Kenley, and Brittany's experience working together. And then hopefully if there's time, you'll experience a tiny, tiny slice of what we do firsthand and think about any connections and applications to your context, whatever that may be. So our flow is, we're doing our objectives in flow. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kindred and our mission and vision and our work, but then really want to give you a chance to hear from our ROAR panel and do that tiny taste before we reflect and close. So some of you may be familiar with Kindred's work. We've been able to be part of this conference this is the 3rd year now, but we are a diverse network of caregivers and school staff committed to advancing equitable life opportunities for all children. This picture is from the before times in one of our partner schools when we bring families and staff from across our network together to celebrate the equity-driven work that they've been doing all year. Our vision is collective well-being, and the way we define that is that in all schools, children and families will thrive without difference by economic situation, racial or ethnic identity, ability, or any other designation. The way we work toward that vision every day is by partnering with caregivers, staff, and school and system leaders to co-create, co-design equitable anti-racist schools that in fact advance well-being. So here's how we do that. Our theory of change is derived from 50 different bodies of research around psychology, sociology, lots of other things, behavioral science. And our work is designed to drive at the personal, social, and structural levels of a school to have an ecosystem impact. And practically what that looks like is us entering into partnerships with schools typically for 3 to 4 years. We facilitate connections, build capacity, and sustain progress. And what that looks like on the ground is that we, in our diverse schools, we started in one school in 2016. Now, fast forward 5 years, we've grown to 17 schools in DC and 1 school partner in California. And we bring together diverse groups of caregivers and staff to engage in interracial group dialogue, during which they examine their own identities, hear about each other's intersectional identities, learn about each other's histories, and then we look at how racial inequity and injustice is showing up and manifesting in the school community in order to take a collective action to address it and to advance equity and racial justice in the school. We also build capacity by training folks who have gone through our dialogue process in facilitating their own groups, thereby having sort of a force multiplier effect and growing the community of staff and caregivers and leaders who are committed to working together toward this goal. And then we help sustain the progress by building out the infrastructure through equity teams, which are spaces for ongoing identity processing, equity-driven action, and community building within the school community. And all of this is grounded in the research behind and the need to develop relational trust and empathy and authentic relationships with each other. And that's what you'll hear about in a moment when you meet our panelists. So E.L. Haynes is a fourth-year partner school with Kindred. After the first year, when two groups of parents went through the dialogue process I just shared, they decided to come together as their collective action to form a parent body that was grounded in and working toward equity. And that parent body is called ROAR, which stands for Relationships, Opportunities, and Resources. And these are just a few snapshots of ROAR in action. They've formed their own dialogue groups beyond what we have facilitated ourselves. These are some of the in-person and virtual meetings that have happened this year. And their vision here, and I'm going to give them, of course, the floor to share more, but ROAR's vision is that parents have the knowledge, resources, and relationships to support each other and their children so that all children achieve success and belong to a connected, inclusive, and multicultural community. And Brittany can probably speak a bit more to how multicultural and diverse Haynes is, because it is a very diverse community. On the right are some of the initiatives that ROAR has created, implemented, and is sustaining to get at that vision. So that is all of my talking. I now want to just get into our panel conversation and ask each of our panelists, starting with Dominique or Kenley as the parent perspective, tell us just what your work with ROAR has meant to you personally and how you see it impacting the E.L. Haynes community.
Great, I'll go first. Dominique nominated me in our side chat, so I'm gonna go first. It's a pleasure to be here today. Yeah, how it has, what it's meant to me personally, it's really meant so much to me. I wanted to have a community where I felt seen and supported when I sent my kids to Haynes, and it wasn't until I got to spend time getting to know Dominique and some of my other ROAR members through Kindred's dialogue model that I felt I really knew some of my fellow parents and had an authentic, deep connection as a parent. I had developed strong relationships across difference through my work. I do also work in education, but developing a relationship with Dominique is probably the first time I can say that as an adult, I made a true, pure friend who is a Black person. It feels very strange to say that, but that's the reality. And my relationship with her has just meant so much as, as a friend, somebody I can rely on, somebody I can talk to about anything. And this connection and these connections are the community that I want and the future I want for my children. I believe that if we can have more parents experience the connection that's possible through dialogue, we can have the meaningful and really complex and hard conversations needed to address the racial inequity we see in our school. It's no silver bullet. Even with the parents I'm closest with in ROAR, we still have a really hard time talking about race and the complexities of race, but it's the most promising work I've been part of.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kenley, and thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that truth. Dominique, do you want to pick it up from there, and then Brittany can give us the school leader / parent perspective?
Sure. I think I pretty much echo what Kenley has shared thus far in saying that ROAR has been very instrumental in bridging the gap between myself and those within my community. And it's really given me the opportunity to forge these bonds with individuals who genuinely care about me and my children. And if it had not been for our dialogue sessions, I probably wouldn't have been able to have such a fortified connection with them. I think all in all, it's been really instrumental to my growth as a person, and I just see great things coming from it in the long run.
Thank you, Dominique.
All right.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Wagner-Friel. As Meredith shared, I'm the principal at Haynes. And in that seat, I think what working with Roar has meant to me, it's just, I mean, first, it's been invaluable. It has really helped me in my seat as principal have a much deeper sense of connection with families, and has really given me unparalleled appreciation for the diverse perspectives of families, which in turn has really enabled me as a leader to lead more equitably and more effectively, since it's given me and the school team much richer information about families' views, their needs, their interests. I would also say that, like, as a person, as a human being, I just have a really much stronger sense of connection and trust with families. It's working with Roar has really enabled me to be more vulnerable and to be more upfront about areas where as a school we are growing and challenges that we face, so that together with parents, we can really partner and try to think of the third way, the fifth way, the sixth way of how to overcome those challenges. And whenever I need input on something, I know I always can get that input from Roar, who will go out to the broader network of families to get that input, which enables us to come up with much more robust plans on behalf of our kids.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany. I'm actually going to put you on the spot, just since you talked about the input that you're getting, the kind of collaboration with families and among staff and families. If you can share maybe a specific example of that, and one of Roar's kind of broader, initiatives, or what they're working toward that you think has really encapsulates what the work is and the impact you hope and see it having on the community. Words are hard sometimes.
I could give lots of examples here, but I think one thing that is currently up and running that has been a dream for a really long time that Dominique really helped lift off the ground was soccer. So as an elementary school, we have never had organized sports at our school until now. And we have Saturday soccer happening for our youngest students up through first grade. And it's been a really natural way for families to connect with one another and to build authentic relationships. And this was fully parent driven and established. The school has supported it in offering scholarships to students, helping with some coaching. Which is just funny because none of us are soccer people, but we coach anyways. And it's just been a really awesome way for families and staff to connect, and for families and families to connect with one another outside of the constraints of, or the traditional structure of school. And I think what it illustrates is just how we can come together as a community and really do something amazing for our children when we're working together in partnership with one another.
Awesome. And don't underestimate your coaching skills. I've heard great things. Great. Well, we can come back to some other things on that front as well, Brittany, but love to hear Kenley and Dominique, what Roar initiative you think really kind of symbolizes the work you're doing and what it means for the community.
I think for me, I think soccer is a great initiative, but we do, like Brittany said, we have so many of them. Some of the ones that I've recently participated in is the dialogue group. And now I have this real bond with people who I otherwise would not know because our kids are in different grade levels. And when we see each other, we like really take a moment to acknowledge one another and like to kind of dig in and to have that real relationship with one another, which is always so nice, especially when you live here in DC by yourself, just having that partnership. Another thing that we've been able to really drive, or one moment that I kind of knew that this was the work, was at soccer when the little girl came. She was having difficulty kind of playing with other kids because she had been on a previous soccer team, and then she showed up at our soccer team and her eyes lit up and she was there and she was so happy to be there amongst her friends. And of course, she was, I think she comes from like an immigrant family. So it was just nice to see that relationship built. Also, some of the work that Kenley kind of drove was the Parent Voice Project. And now I have this real rapport with families and parents and kids who will come up to me and tell me like how their soccer games or baseball games are going outside of school. So I think we do so much, honestly, across the board that it's hard to kind of narrow in, but all of it is really rewarding and fulfilling.
Thank you, Dominique. And just to mention, Dominique said you took part in the dialogue group, but you were the facilitator of the dialogue group. So really bringing families together. We had for that one, what I think interpretation in Spanish and Amharic, and it was done in English. So really a representative group of caregivers from the Haynes community engaging in these really difficult but sort of bond building conversation over the course of many sessions. So just want to give you some shine, as you say, in the Haynes community for that. Kenley, what would you add?
Yeah, I just add, first of all, Dominique is awesome. I think everybody finally can hear a little bit about how busy she's been this spring, and how much of a leader she's been. So just want to give her a little shine, a little more shine right there. But I think what's important to me is how everything sort of works together. I mean, it wasn't on purpose, it's just how it's been. So Dominique mentioned parent voices. What that specifically was is, we noticed that we couldn't just have the same old meetings because people weren't showing up to them. So we decided to actively reach out to parents to just hear what they wanted from our parent community in our school. We called over 80 families, and we talked to 50 families that were specifically proactively representative. And that was great. I don't know, Dominique's talked to people for like an hour each time. I don't know what she was doing, but that's how she is. But what was so neat about that was that when it came time to start up our dialogue group, which again was like completely parent run, we needed to go get families. We were able to go back to parent voices because we had already made all those calls and talked to people, and fortunately we got 10 out of the 12 members of that dialogue group to be families of color. So it was actually finally truly represented. Normally white families are overrepresented, and that really meant to a lot of us, a lot to us as parents. And I think the last piece, this is sort of what's made the initiatives work and how it all comes together, is Brittany. Brittany, when we came to her about dialogue, and we had some financial needs, and we had to, like we wanted food for the dialogue, she just was a champion immediately. Asked us what we needed, advocated for us with the rest of the administration, and so all those things put together is how we were able to be successful.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Kenley. Yeah, it was definitely a fully collaborative effort. And in our work, our executive director calls it the love triangle of collaboration between or among leaders, staff, and families. And that's really what we're driving in the school communities in which we work, is this co-creation with all stakeholder groups. So before we open it up for questions from folks who have joined us, would love to hear if I were in a school community that does not have an equity-driven parent or parent staff body, what's one tip or one learning or one piece of advice you would give me if I wanted to get this work started in my community? And anyone can jump in and start. Brittany,
I think, all right. So, that's a really great question. And for me, I think that one thing that one can do is just to put themselves out there, to be quite honest, and to start communicating, to be the example and to lead. And not wait for the change to necessarily come in any one aspect or way. It's hard work, don't get me wrong, but it's so rewarding when you see families, friendships, like our kids, parents building and connecting with one another. It's so heartwarming, quite honestly. So my answer is just to get out there and to say hi to someone and just move forward with it. Be genuine.
And you model that every day, Dominique. Thank you.
Yeah, she's basically our role model for that. Nobody does that better than Dominique. I'll just jump in. I'll let Brittany have the last word. I would say that this really is not going to happen the way you imagine. So out of the very first dialogue groups, we tried to have an equity committee. I wasn't in it. Dominique wasn't in it. basically everybody dropped out because they were too busy. Like it just, you know, they really tried, and one person is left from that group. But you know what? She stuck with it, and Dominique and I just glommed onto her. We're like, we're doing this with you. We don't care. We weren't elected. Nothing happened. We just really wanted to do the work. And we just stuck with it. We tried things. We failed so many times. We had infighting. We've had a lot of problems, but we just keep going. We just can't get rid of us. And so I think that's sort of my tip. Just keep going.
And that's a really good segue to mine. I think my advice would be just to be patient and persistent. I think we all have our whys about why this is important to us, and just to be unrelenting in moving forward, right? And to, as Kenley said, like, keep trying, don't give up. And as Dominique said, just put yourself out there and start trying things. And you're going to fall down, and it's not going to go the right way or the way that you want it to go. And it's just about getting back up and trying again. So really being persistent about your goal and what you're going for, and being patient, because this is adaptive change. This does not happen overnight. It's about people's values and beliefs, and there's emotion behind this work, and it takes time. And so my advice would be patient and persistent.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you for being both of those things throughout the journey of our partnership. I do want to open up to questions for a few minutes before we give you a little taste of an activity, but there was a request to see the initiatives again, so I do want to put those up. And then just want to open up the space, so if you've got a question, feel free to come off of mute and come on camera if you can, and go ahead and ask what's on your mind.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What is the best form of communication for parents? What have you found that works the best? Is it email? Is it physically calling? Or I'm just curious.
Honestly, there is no best form of communication. We tackle it from every aspect, whether it's a phone call, an email, a text message, whether it's a week in advance so you can add it to your calendar, or it's an hour in advance of what the event is actually going to be happening. We actually over communicate. So I guess that's the best form of communication, to over communicate in every way possible.
Yeah, the WhatsApp group has also been really relatively successful. We use WhatsApp, really, again, also being proactive and like making sure that when somebody comes to a meeting, we text them afterwards and like make sure that they know that we really appreciate them coming. So it's like a lot of little things.
Yeah, I would echo that just in terms of Kindred's work more broadly. It really is, like Dominique said, the over communication. We, you know, sort of verge on the borderline of harassing folks with like, don't forget our meetings now, or like, we'd love to see you there. But it's really that between session or between meeting or between event communication that's personalized, that, you know, it shows like you're showing up for someone, you're listening, you're building that authentic relationship. And so that is time consuming, but that is what the work is it's really about building community that way between individuals. And then as a group, we have a lot of either group chats, like text messages, or like Kenley said, WhatsApp groups. But I still have group texts from groups that I facilitated 2 years ago where, you know, it's someone's birthday and we all celebrate, or we share articles or initiatives and things like that. So they really, the bonds continue growing beyond the group or the partnership. Thank you for the question.
I have a question. I'm curious about the dialogues, and like, are there sort of like some typical topics that might be, you know, at the forefront in those? Like, could you give us some examples of what gets discussed?
Yeah. So we do have a curriculum that is meant to be flexible. It's meant to be a starting place. It's not, you know, completely prescriptive. So the arc of the curriculum is such that we start our groups by building trust and building understanding of each other's identities and examining our own identities. And then we go into looking more closely at the way that race and racism show up in our society, and then, you know, zero in on the school community and how it's showing up there. And then we coalesce around an action that we want to take to address it. And so within that, in a school community, we talk a lot about our histories, what school was like for us, what school was like for our own families, how inequities show up there, what our hopes and dreams and fears are for our own children's futures and how that looks different, how we experience the school community, and then what we see as a vision for an equitable and loving and anti-racist school community in terms of trusting relationships, in terms of academic support, in terms of social emotional wellness, different buckets. And so a lot of times it comes down to identifying that there aren't trusting relationships in a school community, or that communication isn't such that it fosters a sense of belonging for all families and stakeholders. So those are some of the things that typically come up in our groups. So maybe one more question before we give you a little activity that Dominique's going to lead us in as a seasoned dialogue facilitator. We use a lot of pregnant pauses or silence in our groups too, so we're comfortable with this.
It means we're doing an amazing job.
I'll take it. No? All right. Well, actually, and I do want, before we close the panel part of this, I wanted to give Dominique, Kenley, and Brittany a chance for any sort of last reflections or comments before we shift into our identity star.
Well, I'm truly grateful for the work that Kindred's presence within our school system. Without it, I would not be who I am right now at this very moment. I have Kenley backing me every day, being that voice in my ear that says, go for it, Dominique, go for it. And I'm so grateful. And I know that this is a friendship that will last forever and ever.
Thank you, Dominique. That's beautiful, right? And I do think that is symbolic of, like, we start at the individual level, and that's what the foundation is of changing practices and policies, and getting at the structural piece is it's all grounded in loving and trusting community and relationships. So thank you. So in the time we have left, Dominique, I'm going to kick it to you to just guide us in our mini identity star activity, which is how we typically start our dialogue group session, or our first session is to give folks a chance to think about their own identities and hear about each other's. So Dominique is going to take us through that. Hopefully we'll have a little time for a couple folks to share, and then we'll close out and share our contact information in case you'd like to continue this conversation beyond this session.
All right, so it's time for a tiny taste of dialogue. So what we're going to be doing now is engaging in a mini dialogue activity called the Identity Star. And I'm going to ask attendees to have a piece of paper, or maybe just have your mind open and draw a star, a 5-point star, and you want to have your name in the middle of that star. And you pretty much want to label each point on the star with an important part of how you identify as a person. I'd say let's do maybe 3 minutes for this. That way you guys have a little bit of time to go into your mind and think about who you are, whether that's a mother, a father, a leader, a educator, but dig deep. And our clock will start now. All right, so we're going to give you a few more moments to kind of go over your identity star and what you're putting up. If anybody needs a little bit more time, just let us know in the chat. Or you can give us, well, I didn't see the emoji option at the bottom. Well, it doesn't look like I see anyone. Okay. It doesn't, I'm going to give you guys 60 more seconds, and then I'll ask one of my fellow panelists to go ahead and share their answers for the identity star.
I'll go. I don't know if Brittany's ready or not. I don't know if you can see my thing. Sorry, I gotta, well, that's okay. I'm just gonna tell you what I've got on my star because I can't hold this up very well. I have white man. I'm half Japanese, but everybody thinks I'm white, so I get all the full privilege of that. And I have lots of other privilege, which thanks to working in this sector, I am pretty aware of nowadays. Cis, hetero, able-bodied U.S. citizen, the whole shebang. I do also deeply identify with my family's roots. My father is from Japan. My mother is from Belgium. And growing up, that was really my dominant identity, is being a child of immigrants. Something that people may not know about me that is really drives me and is a big part of my life is that I love learning. I really just enjoy that spark. I love school. I love math. I love learning new sports and stuff like that. That really gives me a lot of energy. I'm a really proud father of an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, 2 girls, who I'm the ironic guy who only wants to work from home if my kids are at home on virtual school. So I just enjoy them so much, not just love them. I really enjoy them. I get a kick out of them, and they're the only people who think I'm really funny. So I like them. And then I really, really deeply care about opportunity and people's having opportunities in life. That's sort of my guiding North Star. That's my identity star.
Thank you, Kenley. I know Dominique's
Thank
back.
you,
I know you're having some
Kenley.
tech stuff.
Yes. Thanks so much for that, Kenley. It was very beautiful reflections. Brittany, do you think maybe you want to share?
Sure, I can share. I feel like mine isn't as elaborate as Kenley's. I didn't realize I was supposed to be writing sentences at each point. But I went with one-word identifiers at each point, but I first wrote down that I identify as a woman. I am a mother of 2 beautiful children. Griffin is 3 and Bennett is 6 months. So I'm also a tired mother. And I am a wife. My wife, Carla, and I have been married for 6 years. And I identify as white. That is a big part of my identity that I carry with me that I think I would say in the last 10 or 15 years has really become much more a part of my identity. I think 15 years ago, I wouldn't have put that on my identity star. And then just in thinking about my day-to-day and how I live and breathe every day of most days of my life, almost every day, I would identify myself as a principal. That is a huge piece of my life and something that I love about my daily experience. So I am a white woman, tired mother, wife, and a leader.
Thank you, Brittany. That was really beautiful.
What would typically happen, and thank you, Dominique, for that facilitation. After everyone, let's say we were a dialogue group, everyone would share their star, and then we would process together. So a lot of our work in dialogue is really just processing what's coming up for us, what we've heard, and we would jump into what we heard that was similar. What commonalities do we have? What's different? How was race part of what most people put down in their star? Was it not part of what anyone put down? And why do we think that is? And a lot of times we also talk about what's most nourishing about our identities right now. What piece of our identity is really giving us energy? What part of our identity might be really challenging in this moment in our lives, right? And we know this is fluid and it changes. And the goal here is to begin to really get at that unconscious part of our brain where empathy sits, because our methodology is grounded in that research as well, that empathy is part of that unconscious brain. And to get at it, we really have to, understand and listen to each other and grow to trust and care about each other. And that's how the empathy muscle grows. So that's just a little taste of how we do dialogue. I'll share one quick example. Yesterday, I was facilitating a group of staff members at one of our partner schools. I think there were 12 or 14 members in the group, and we were talking about positive and negative memories of our parent or caregivers' experiences with education. So thinking about what their lives and their educational histories were like, both as children and then as adolescents. And everyone shares a moment, a positive and negative moment, or if they don't know what their parent or caregiver's educational experience was like, where they share that and what that how that impacts them. But before we do that, we share a picture of our parents and caregivers. And so through that process, and in this group, we had a staff member who grew up in Cameroon, a staff member who grew up in Morocco, a staff member who grew up in the Philippines, and someone who grew up in segregation in the 60s. And so all parts of the globe, and people sharing, going back a generation, what school is like. And then we really processed what's showing up in this space. And the depth that this group went to was really powerful. And the reflections they had about what it's going to be like to see each other virtually or in real life in the school building the next day, knowing this about each other was also really powerful. So that was just a quick taste of our dialogue model. I'm going to share my screen again, and just as we close out, which I think we're doing, and share our info, our contact info. So Roar has its own email address. It's elhainesfamilies@gmail.com. And there's mine from Kindred. Welcome the opportunity to connect after this session. And in the time we've got left until folks start joining from other breakout rooms, would just love anyone who wants to reflect on or ask any questions that we can follow up on later, to feel free to do so. And just thank you for being part of this conversation. But I want to open it up to anyone who wants to share anything.
I'm sorry, can you put that screen up again?
Oh, sure. This one?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. There you go. And there's a picture of Roar from the before times. One of our, I think this might have been a dialogue group or a planning meeting. I can't recall.
Absolutely. And you're right. This is such a safe space. And in all of our dialogue processing groups, that is one of our fundamental rules, is that it is a safe space for individuals to come and to be transparent about who they are and to learn from one another and to just grow with one another. Because like many of you all here, we're intentionally trying to build our community and to have that diversity. And it doesn't happen unless we show up. And so thank you so much for showing up.